another day.
Kevin, you're going, right?
Yeah.
Have that story.
All right, I'd like to call to order the library board. Roll call, please.
Wines. Here. White.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Dilbeck.
Here.
Bond.
Here.
Caldarn.
Here.
Streller.
Here.
Woo-hoo, quorum. Item 1, consent agenda.
Let's have Russ pray right.
Oh, sorry, Russ, you want-
That's right. Father, we thank you for this country that we live in. We thank you for this democracy that we get to represent. And dear Lord, this evening as we come together to do the works of the city, dear Lord, we ask that this council would be blessed with some wisdom, would be blessed with discernment, that the decisions they make here will be those that are best for this community and will continue to move forward, Perry, in this county, in this state, and in this country. Dear Lord, we thank you for all that you've given us. Most of all, we thank you for your Son and the grace that he's bestowed upon us. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. All right, item 1, consent agenda. 3 items.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I don't ever get to do that.
Roll call?
Wines. Yes. White.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond.
Yes.
Caldarn.
Yes.
Streller.
Yes.
Guess there's no one really to send a comment. Quarterly report by Pam Rigg.
We lost one of our co-workers in the library in December to COVID. She left a huge void in our hearts as well as our workplace. She was great at customer service, readers advisory, and she was a detail person. Many patrons are grieving with us. Exchange Bank donated $250 as one of their acts of kindness. We cleared the overdue fines of many children so their card is again in good standing. Thanks so much to the staff at Exchange Bank for doing a good deed on behalf of the kids. We checked out 3,168 items between October 1st and the end of December. We also checked out 1,747 items to our patrons on Overdrive. We added 233 physical items to our collection during this period and spent our grant money on materials for Overdrive. We have had 17 teens sign up for our teen book boxes that we started in October. The next book box will be in February, and teens can sign up starting January 20th. Each box will have a hand-picked library book, a bookmark, a homemade candles, goodies, and a treat. I'm proud of her. 17 teenagers, that's awesome. Many popular authors have published in the last few months. We have new books by David Baldacci, Jeffrey Deaver, Patricia Cornwell, Janet Ivanovich, Diana Gabaldon, Nora Roberts, and Daniel Steele. These books are also available via Overdrive, but the wait most times is shorter in paper. So come check them out in paper. If you have a library card, we can put your name on the list and give you a call when it's your turn. Many of our adult fiction titles will receive in large print. The larger print allows me to skip the bifocals or readers. I don't know how many times we hear patrons say that they didn't used to like large print, but now they think it's wonderful. We are temporarily pausing our programming, but hope to resume soon, and that's because of COVID. Savannah is busy planning summer reading program. We will still have the same format as last year with reservations for time slots. Keep your eye on our social media for upcoming posts for more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tough times for you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
All right, any new business? Motion on adjournment?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Wines. Yes. White. Brown.
Yes.
Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond.
Yes.
Caldarn.
Yes.
Streller.
Yes.
I was sick a long time ago. I don't have the COVID, come on.
Oh, those seats are empty next to you.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Prairie Municipal Authority, January 18th, 2022 at 6:19. Roll call, please.
Wines.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Brown.
Here.
Dilbeck.
Here.
Bond.
Here.
Caldarn.
Here.
Streller.
Here. I do declare a quorum. Item number 1 is the consent agenda. There is a couple items there.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes, thank you. Item 4, comments from those assembled pertaining to the items on the PMA this evening. Means we have no assembly. Item 5, proclamation, accommodations, reports, and inquiries by the governing body. Hearing none. Item 6, approval of a development agreement with KMR Development LLC, an Oklahoma Limited Liability Company, Freedom Homes Company LLC, and Oklahoma Limited Liability Company in the city of Perry.
Mr. Mayor, there'll be no reason to come back to this. I was supposed to get today a red line draft from Jimbo and
Okay.
Josh, and I never got it. So
Okay?
we can convene and talk about it if you want, but we're not gonna
All right.
be able to take action because I haven't gotten
All right.
that back.
All right.
And I will tell you, I sent it, the document on the 12th, and then they didn't get it, so I resent it. I sent my email again that showed that I sent it on the 17th, and so, they have had it, and Jimbo said he's worked his red lines, but Josh hadn't, so I was expecting to get it back so we could hand it out, but we don't have it, so.
Do we need a table or anything?
Oh, yeah, you could table it, I think that would be good.
Would that
Yeah, that'd be good.
motion to table?
Second.
Roll call.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Vaughn, Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Item 7, any new business that needs to come before the authority? Hearing none. Item 8, motion on adjournment, please.
So moved. Second?
Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Perry, January 24th, 2022. Roll call, please. 6:22.
Wines,
Here.
White,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Dilbeck,
Here.
Vaughn,
Here.
Calderon,
Here.
Stroller.
Here. I need to go back to the, maybe the minutes in the PMA. Make sure it says January 24th. This one here says the 18th, because we skipped the meeting. So make sure that
Oh, yeah.
it threw me off when I looked at it, said 24th. I'm like, that's not what I said back there. So make sure it's
Yeah.
noted, okay?
Yep, I will.
Item number 1 is the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Consent agenda.
Roll call, please.
Wine,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Item 4, comments from those assembled pertaining to the items on the city agenda. Item 5, proclamation, culmination, reports, and inquiries by the governing body. Item 6, city manager's report. Larry, Item 7, chief financial officer's report.
I'm here.
Yeah, I can see. You take it up from the room, we can see you.
Well, hey, since we're moving through this agenda so fast, I thought maybe I'd take a little bit of time and report on a handful of things.
Don't make up for lost time. We're good.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Handful of things that we need to kind of address. You guys have the financials in your packet. 50% is kind of where where we should run. As far as budget, you will see that there are quite a few departments that are now in excess of 50%. All of those, I can't say all of those, the majority of that money will either be made up in the rest of the year, i.e. we had a lot of one-time things, or will be made up in budget amendments whenever we carry forward prior year expenses, that we didn't expend last year. Those encumbrances carry over to this year, and so we just have to carry them over because there were things that we purchased this year, i.e. When we closed on the Vance property, or not the Vance property, on Seth Wadley property. That was a carryover from prior year. We don't put that in our current operating budget until it actually happens at this point, so we'll move those dollars over. If you're looking at general government, that's the big number. That's why I'm not that worried about general government. The others had a handful of things. Matter of fact, Brian and I were talking today about the police and the carryover of some of the ammunition on back order and some of those things that were actually skewing his numbers. But we went down through those today and had a visit about where we were on those. The other expenses really kind of in line. Here's a couple of things that are good news. Sales tax is up 7% for the first 6 months of the year. We had a $200,000 sales tax deposit in December, had another $191,000 sales tax deposit in January. Those are actually good numbers, something that we haven't seen in a while. And likewise, use tax is up about 2% year to date, which is actually a good number. We've seen a lot of use tax numbers actually falling as more people got out, started going back to the stores, doing those kind of things. Use tax in other communities has been on the decline. I say it every time I give a financial presentation. If you can't buy it here, at least ship it here. Make sure that we're trying to get all the sales tax dollars we can for every dollar you're spending right here in the city of Perry. So we need to do that. The other big number as far as revenues go, looking really good on our hotel motel tax. Activity coming back, and remember that this is December, so this was, effectively the monies that we had collected in November that were then deposited in December. So we'll have Christmas travel, we'll have another round of decent hotel motel collections in January's deposit, which we'll talk about next month, and then we'll actually slow off probably until summer travel kind of kicks in. We may get a little bit at spring break, but it probably won't be back to these numbers. If it is, great, I love it, but it's not what we would expect, and it's really not what we budget for or plan for.
We're still seeming pretty full out there.
Well,
from what they had been anyway.
Yeah, and if some of our larger employers are bringing people in and have transitions and those kind of things, that always helps, because we end up with really good numbers. On the utility side, numbers are really looking pretty good. The expenses that were over sewer, for instance, is capital outlay dollars that, are one-time expenses. Those aren't annualized. So we're really setting pretty good. If you look at where we are on budget versus total net income right now, we've only lost $136,000. Remember, we budgeted to lose $900,000. Now, we do have, we kind of tabled it, but one of those big expenditures is going to be related to the Woods Edition, and that was budgeted at a $600,000 number. Based on where we are now, and we'll go into some further discussions on that, but it's looking like our matching money is probably not going to be 1-to-1, and so we're probably going to end up spending about $850 plus out of our own pocket to do phase one of that project whenever it comes around. So, that's there. One of the other things that I want to mention, I don't know if you all heard or have seen, but ARPA funds, the final regs came out from the U.S. Treasury related to ARPA. You'd heard us in the past, water, wastewater, broadband, right? They had the other sections in there. One of the other sections was called lost revenue. We couldn't qualify under the interim final rule. We couldn't qualify under the lost revenue piece. Lost revenue would be beneficial to us because it effectively takes the restriction off of it that it has to be for A, B, C, or D, and allows it to be used as general government purpose money. Effectively unrestricted. You have to meet the qualifications, but pretty much anything related to the government at that point, expenditure works. When the final rule was released, there was an additional revenue loss qualification that I don't know who expected it. I sure didn't expect it. But the new provision in the final rule says that if you receive less than $10 million in ARPA funds, you can claim that all of those ARPA funds were revenue loss, and the Treasury will not question it. Yeah, kind of a jaw dropper. I read it the first time and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This doesn't really work that way. Now, here's a predicament that we're in, and guys, this is kind of gonna open up maybe a little bigger discussion that we need to have at some point. But, you know, we had planned on all of those ARPA dollars going to water and wastewater. At this point, I'm telling you that as of April 1st, when we get to April 1st and the final rule goes into effect, those dollars do not have to be spent that way. If we choose, we can qualify those as revenue loss, which would be, for us, is going to be, that $800,000 number. We can qualify that as revenue loss and use it for any project that we want. That kind of has a little bit of bearing on, maybe on some of the decisions that we're going to make and where we're going to go. But whenever we take a step back and look at where we are, I think we need to have some real discussions about where you all want to put priorities, because where you want to put priorities really is going to affect what we do. Larry and I have been back and forth with his priority list on what monies need to be spent, where things need to go. We just adopted the CIP plan for the CDBG money and what 10 items were on there and how those pieces play out. Here's the predicament that I find myself in. You guys are always asking, can we afford this, can we afford this, can we afford this? Well, there's only so much money that we can afford, and at the end of the day, we're gonna run out of money. I mean, every year we have about $300,000 that we can spend on capital outlay. That's just kind of been our running rule, as all the other costs go up, we still keep that $300,000 in capital outlay. This year we did a whole lot more, but that's why we have the budget deficit that we have, or the projected budget deficit. We adopted a deficit budget there. So that's where we would sit. Whenever we go down the list, the things that we actually had in our capital outlay and kind of had planned, the things that we dropped from our capital outlay plan back whenever we were doing the budget versus what shows up on the CIP schedule versus what shows up on the mouths on list that we kind of put together. Guys, we're not consistent in any of those. And at a point in time, we've got to stop and we've got to say, all right, these are our final priorities. I'm going to take, at this point, the last meeting, whenever we adopted, or back in December, when we adopted that CIP, you guys were all in agreement that these have to be our number one priorities over what all of these other things are. And we need to move forward. If it's not, we need to have another visit about that, because it will affect how I answer questions about moving forward, how I answer questions about, do we really need to have a meeting with State Land Office, and what dollars are we going to spend and commit long-term to developing potentially the corner at 15th and Further? That's on one side. If we have no desire to get that part developed and to build another fire station out there and to do that piece, from your all standpoint, we don't need to be spending any more time on it, But I think we've come through all of these iterations, and we've come through all these things, and we never get a definite, this is what we want to spend the money on. This has to be our priority number one, and this has to do it. And I'm just going to use this for instance because it's on the agenda, and Russell and I have talked about this, but, the vehicle that was on the budget last year that ended up getting dropped was the wet rescue truck at $650,000, at $265,000. We turn around and we get to December, whenever we adopt the CIP, we've now got an engine that's more important than that. And in talking to Russell, we've got two engines that are more important than getting that wet rescue truck. You see what I'm saying? Put into place. Whenever we adopted the CIP plan, that's what we put. We put one engine on there as our number two item. I mean, it was number two on the CIP as far as what we were looking at, and where we wanted to go. We said municipal complex is number one. Well, if municipal complex is number one, I need to be moving towards municipal complex, if we're really serious about that, you know. We're putting $25,000 under grant money into the front of City Hall right now. You know, we budgeted effectively a placeholder of $200,000 more in there for this year's budget. That money has been or will be spent in various and other pieces. But if that's really our number one priority, you know, we need to start looking at it. On a 30-year note, that's about $260,000 of debt service a year. I'm just trying to give you practical ideas of what that is. You know, pumper truck is number two. You know, it's going to come in tonight. I'm jumping ahead a little bit on the items, but Larry's got a recommendation. His recommendation is that we buy the pumper truck. That's $72,000 a year for the new pumper truck. He wants to repair the other one. I'll read you his email here in a second, but he wants to repair the other one and wants to move forward with purchasing this one new engine to replace number 7, right?
Engine 7, yes, sir.
Engine 7. But he wants to put that in and do that, and that's going to be where the recommendation is coming. Well, that's $70,000. Do you see what I'm saying? We're out of money as far as being able to do these things. That doesn't buy another street vehicle. That doesn't buy, on this list, there's 2 dump trucks, a grader, and a loader that all come together. You know, I mean, that's another $500,000 for the street department. You know, we just bought the asphalt zipper, but without the loader to push it and without the dump trucks to haul the stuff and without a grader to follow it, we need to invest another $500,000 in that project, you know, to get that where it needs to be. Well, it's not going to do us any good to set $180,000 aside out here and just hold it whenever we've got, you know, a piece of equipment that we really can't use to its fullest ability because we don't have the other pieces to go along with it. So I just want you guys to think about really where do we want this to go? Added it all up, and this is, you know, I mean, if we take the priority list, the 10 items, running it out over the next 10 years, running it out over the next 5 years in the capital outlay piece, we've got about $18 million worth of projects that we need to do. Debt service, averaging that debt service out, some of it between 7-year for vehicles, some of it on 30-year for trucks and everything else, we get to about $1 million of annual debt service that we would need to issue. $1 million, in practical terms, guys, is a 10% raise in utility rates. We run 10% across the board, we could afford $1 million. But if we're not going to do that, we need to, you see what I'm saying? At some point, the money's got to meet the road. We can dream all we want and we can chase a whole lot of things, but at some point, we've got to make the hard and fast decision that this is what we're going to buckle down and do. These are the pieces we're really going to make happen. And the rest of it, you know, Russell, if your truck breaks down this time, man, you know, we're only going to repair it, you know, and get to the point that we're saying, hey, the loader, you know, I mean, the back end's out. Yeah, we've got to spend $20,000, but it's a whole lot better than spending $130,000 to replace it. Does that make sense? There just comes that point that we're not going to be able to do all of these things. But at this point, you guys, hey, yes, we want to do that. Yes, we want. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I want to do all of them. And I'm telling you, here's one way. We can do all of them. We'll go issue $18 million bond. We'll have to raise utility rates to do it. I want to give you, just think about this. I tell you that we have $300,000 a year to pay capital outlay projects each year. $300,000, it's kind of been my set number. Our sales tax collections are going to be right at $500,000 for the year. That's what 1 penny of sales tax in the general, because that's what we get in the general fund, is $500,000. We couldn't go out and issue debt. You know, we couldn't go issue another penny. Number one, I don't think we could get another penny passed. But if we did get another penny passed, it'd generate $500,000. $500,000 doesn't get us this debt service for these projects that I'm talking about. $1 million, 2 pennies would get us there. That would get us $1 million, but we're not going to get 2 pennies. Our debt structure, we don't free up a penny and a quarter until we get to 2030. Okay, so this decade, we're not going to get another penny in sales tax. So I want to see good things happen. I want to see things go. But whenever I'm looking at, I've got $800,000 for the Woods Edition. I've got $750,000 for the road on the Perry Dam. We've got $3 million related to water line projects that are out there. We've got another $600,000 related to phase 5 on the sewer. And really the only money that I have available right now, without borrowing or going the other places, and we've already talked about borrowing some of this money, but we've got the ARPA funds, and we have what's left over of the CARES Act. About $1 million is what we have left over. The rest of it, those are just big projects that we're committed to right now. And that's really all the money that we have. So as we get down to really talking about these capital additions, and we talk about buying, whenever Brian comes back for the next police car, or Streets comes back for the next dump truck, or those kind of things, I mean, we've got to really take the step back and say, listen, and guys, I don't think $300,000 is enough. I mean, we really need $1 million a year in capital outlay. But at the operating levels that we're operating at, with the revenue structure that we have on the other side, I can't get you to $1 million. We cannot continue the same operating expenses that we have with the revenues that we have and get to $1 million. So we either have to raise revenues to get there, or we have to cut out expenses. But at the end of the day, what would be an adequate capital replacement number here? About $1 million a year. And here's the problem. We've shortchanged it for the last decade on being short. So that's why, I mean, and we talked about it, you know, I mean, that's why we're playing catch up on a lot of things. That's why we're trying to get over the hump related to that. And to get there takes time. Or it takes some drastic actions of doing some other things and finding the money some other ways. So I want to take this time just to kind of give you guys that brief, because we're going to talk about spending real money tonight. We're going to talk about the rest of the dam acquisition. You know, I mean, we're going to talk about, well, we tabled it, but we were going to talk about Jimbo's development, and we're going to talk about the fire truck and the new engine there. In total, you know, I mean, we're talking about $1.5 million worth of spending whenever you roll all those together. We've committed the dam we've already committed to. We have that. But if you just take our Jimbo commitment and you take our fire commitment, you know, that's $1.4 million that we're going to talk about spending tonight. And that $1.4 million is a lot of money. Okay? And that's what I want to say is let's think about what that $1.4 million does. You know, $1.4 million knocks our general fund reserve in half of what it is today. I go from 8 months of cash on hand to 4 months of cash on hand, like that. Now, we can borrow it and I can structure it out, don't get me wrong, but I want to put it in real today terms. If that's what we're going to go do, that's what the real cost is, and that's where we sit. So.
Well, not that long ago, you were saying we couldn't borrow that. I mean, we were pretty much maxed out on borrowing as well.
Oh, we're maxed out on borrowing
So,
without a new revenue source.
right, but you just said we can borrow it. Well, that's not what we were saying a few months ago.
So what we're going to do, Larry's plan on the capital outlay for the fire engine is to borrow it and plug it into fiscal year 2024's budget. He's delayed the payments until July of 2023 for the first payment, and then it'll be annual payments thereafter. And that debt service, it's about $72,000, will come out of the $300,000 we have for capital outlay.
So you were talking about that one item?
That one item.
Is what you were
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah.
But you're paying interest on that money the whole time, right?
Yeah, we're paying interest on it. But that's what the plan is we're going to talk about.
So the other, before we move on, you said we tabled one item, we tabled action on an item, but we didn't table talking about it, right? We can still,
Correct.
we can still talk about that.
Yeah,
So-
we just tabled
So that's
it
still,
at the
still
PMA.
available to talk about.
Yes.
But, and then another thing, and I don't really want to get down in the weeds here, but you brought up like the asphalt zipper and things. I know I specifically asked those questions at the time, what other expenditures we had. I don't remember if you were there that day or not, but the loader I do not think was something that was said we needed, because we had a loader, is my understanding. And now did you just say we need a loader?
We need to replace the street loader, yes.
Yep.
Well, that's not what.
That's not what we were talking
Well,
about.
I told you there'd be a lot more expenses to this deal. I said that since the beginning.
Well,
This
we knew there
is
would be more.
just a piece.
Yes, we knew there would be some more
But
more
the
expenses.
loader was
and-
specifically talked about.
Yes, the
It was
loader,
specifically told it was not going to have to be replaced.
And we specifically asked if
Yeah.
there was other things we'd have to
we got,
have.
matter of fact, we got the smaller zipper because our loader would work with the smaller zipper,
Well, there's,
if I recall.
by talking to,
Is that
by
right?
talking to Critter, there's rear end problems with the loader and differential problems and transmission problems and so,
And so,
We should have been told this beforehand.
well, and that's,
he's your manager.
blanket statement here is kind of to answer some of the stuff that you just said. To me, it feels like at times, and I'm not picking on any departments or anything like that, but we do try and make decisions and we try and go down paths and set priorities, and then these fires come up. Again, not picking on any departments, but we
No pun intended either.
Good pun.
kind of feels blindsided at times, and then we do have to change directions. You know, we do our planning sessions, and we try and come up with, but I don't know how to get a better picture of the entire outlook to make definite directions when we continue to have, and I get it, things break that we don't realize, but at the same time, I don't know how we get there. But we do need to get there.
Well, and it is. Don't give me, I mean, Russell didn't intend on the filter not, I mean, he's gonna talk a whole lot more when we get,
I know, yeah.
or hopefully not a whole lot more. I've used way more than what you guys were expecting me to talk tonight, but, you know, we're gonna talk about there will be those undiscovered things that do pop up. But I prefer that's where we keep our cash reserves.
Right.
Is these one-off items that, man, this came up and
Well-
this year we need to get through with an extra $75,000 to make the debt payment. We can make that out of fund balance, you know, our rainy day fund. And then next year, we'll build that into what our total expenditures
I
are.
think I felt a little frustration from you, and I think all I was trying to say is I've been frustrated with the for quite a while, and we do have to get there.
Okay, and that's why we've been trying to do a planning session. That's why we try to make sure that we're on the same page before we ever go to the Malzahn Foundation about what our priorities are and where they're gonna come from. And even the lady that came in after looking at her own priorities, I mean, I think we gotta get better at that process. I feel like we've tried, but it's still not where it needs to be in order to be on the same page and to make sure that we're making the best decisions. And it always feels like things change too. I mean, we've been talking about this one for a long time, and the numbers just, I mean, those numbers also keep changing on us too. That wasn't the numbers when we first started talking about it, and now that's ballooned on us. That wasn't the plan, and nor is it something that probably most of the council is comfortable with, because it's way out of range from what we wanted to do and where we were at. And it just feels like the damn project, I mean, every time we turn around, it's the same way. I mean, we try to plan, we try to have a process, we try to think that we're headed in one direction, and then, like Derek said, then it balloons on us, and then we gotta figure out how we're gonna address that, so.
I just want to make sure that, I apologize for the frustration. I just want to make sure you guys.
I didn't mean that negative.
No, just understand that it's real. You know, I mean, there's only so long in my book of maintaining physical health for the city. There's only so long that we can continue to do some things. And then, I mean, I finally have to say stop, you know, I mean, and my saying stop is we've got to have these discussions. I'm fine with it. If you guys want, you see what I'm saying? I mean, if we want to go that route, but we've got to plan another revenue source. We've got to plan another way to get there. We can't continue to do it just on these operations that we currently have and move forward in that piece, so. Now, way over my time, but any questions that you guys have on the financials?
I want to talk about that situation a little bit. You know, as a council, it's not our job to go to the department heads and find out what their expenses are and what their projections are. I mean, we invite them in to our planning session so we can hear from them. But that is ultimately the manager's job to gather that information. We can't nine of us can't go to talk to Russell, and 9 of us go talk to Brian, and 9 of us go talk to Critter. It just doesn't work that way. We hire a manager to gather that information and bring us that information, and we expect it to be right. Now, I know that at times that, just like something breaks, it breaks. I mean, that's unforeseen, you know? But for me, and I'm just talking for me as the mayor here, when something changes down the road, just like this zipper thing, we loaders and graders, and that falls back here. I mean, because ultimately, if Critter didn't tell him that, that's between him and Critter, but he's got to take the heat for changing this. It's his list. He's the one that didn't bring us accurate information. And so, the second thing is that I have a hard time with what you're saying about us expending, not bad towards you, but us expending this money and it locking us down for 7 to 30 years. What if something happens inside that 7 years? We need some money. We're locked down, you know? This water project we did, how long was that water project? 30 years, 25 years?
Yeah, it'll be a 30-year.
Yeah. So, not saying we didn't need it, we did need it, but that locked that money down. We can't do anything with that money for 30 years, you know? And, I don't want to get in a scenario that we're locked down and we don't have any money and something bad happens and how are we going to do, you know?
Pretty close.
And we are pretty close. You're exactly right. So, anyway, that's my rant, sorry. Any more rant? All right, item 8.
Can't wait to read that in your minutes, Christie.
Item 8, consider action with respect to the vacant seat of Ward Number 1, Post 3. Item A is to consider an appointment of qualified candidate for the vacant seat of the late councilperson Mike Morrill, Ward 1, Post 3.
I think we have someone that's qualified that would like to do it again. Danette Marshall, she served with us before, and when we first started having issues with getting seats over there, she was ready to step up and help us out. So I would move to nominate Danette Marshall to serve on the council.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dobek,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes, thank you, council. So Bryce is going to be null and void then?
Yes.
Okay. And also item C. It says C on here.
Oh, well,
It's just the last part.
yeah, the C is a mistake.
Oh, okay, all right,
That's part of B.
okay.
When you go to the next page, sometimes it wants to paginate. So,
What's that word?
paginate. I think
Oh, I
that's.
see the mistake.
Yeah, it's a mistake.
Okay, item 9, consider matters concerning the codification of the Perry Municipal Code 2022. Item A is consider approval of the ordinance number 2022-1, adopting and enacting and recodifying, whatever, a code of
Codification.
codificating, that's not what it says. A code of ordinance for the city of Perry, Oklahoma, to be known as the Perry Municipal Code 2022, establishing the same, providing for the repeal and the certain ordinance not included therein, providing for the manner of amending and the supplementing such code, providing for publishing the title of each chapter and a condensed list or summary of their content and authority, providing for an emergency.
You know, I like to keep up on this so that the web page has an accurate document. So, I mean, if you approve this, you know, we'll just substitute pages, we'll file it up at the library and put it on the website. But it contains what you've passed. And it fixed a few punctuation. It took out Board of Aldermen in one place, it took out Finance Committee in another place. We don't have a Finance Committee, they used to. And so I corrected some provisions there that are no longer applicable and that have been superseded by other provisions. But it's all form and not substance.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2022-1.
Second.
Have a second, sir? Yeah, okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Coldiron,
Yes.
Streller.
Yes. Motion on emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Coldiron,
Yes.
Streller.
Yes. Item B, consider approval of resolution 2022-4 of the City Council of the City of Perry, Oklahoma, notifying the public of the publication of the Perry Municipal Code 2022, setting the price for written copies of the code, directing the city clerk to, 1, file a copy of the resolution in the office of the county clerk of Noble County, and number 2, file a copy of the code in the Noble County, or in the Noble Law Library, and number 3, file at least 3 copies of this code in the office of the city clerk.
Same thing. Required.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Wines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Coldiron,
Yes.
Streller.
Yes, thank you. Item 10, discuss and provide direction regarding repair or replacement of fire engine number 7. Mr. Chief, now I do want to bring it to the council's attention that this chief here needs to be commended because his revenue at the fire station is 99% of his budget this year so far. And we're only 50% way through. So Chief, great job.
Thank you. I really didn't mean anything by the word fire.
It's okay. What I am going to expand a little bit on some of the comments made. I think it was a great segue into some of the things we need to have real discussions about. If I start talking too fast, please, someone just raise your hand and say slow down. Because I do want to make sure I get plenty of information out.
Yeah.
I want to get plenty of information to you guys because I think there is a lot of information you need to have so you can make these decisions, spending money to keep core services going for the fire department, for our community. I'll ask I'll ask Tyson here in a little bit to throw some things up on the board because I'm going to answer some of those exact issues and some of the questions we have as to how did this happen. So I'm going to give you a little bit further background. Engine 7 is a 1993 fire pumper that was purchased in December of 1993. It was purchased for a little over $160,000. It's been a good truck. I can tell you right now, if you went up there and looked at this vehicle, it's going to be pristine compared to any 10-year-old engine you see anywhere in this. I would put it up against any fire department's fire engine that's 10 years old. And it's going to look 10 times better because that's how it's been cared for. Internally, some of the maintenance on it had been lacking for several years. Those maintenance programs have become more robust, if you will. They require annual maintenance. We do have contracts with a company called Miter Fire Support. They're out of Chickasha, Nenakaw area. They actually come to our fire station. They perform that annual maintenance, and they're performing maintenance that is required to take place annually. So that maintenance is now being performed. On December 20th of this past year, we had received notification from the Insurance Service Office. That is what determines what your insurance rating is for your community, your fire suppression rating schedule. That number varies between 1 and 10. There are several ISO Class 1s in the state of Oklahoma. We are a Class 4, 4Y. That's going to be the most important piece of this puzzle tonight is down to 1 fire engine. Our classification will not be a 4. It will jump to an amount that I don't know. I mean, my parents live right here in town. I don't know if I would want them to pay another 10% on their utilities or if I want them paying the difference between a 4 and a 8 on their insurance classification. Because I mean, those rates are going to vary tremendously. We just had this discussion a week ago with a civic group talking about insurance rates. So I want you guys to know that that's a real issue if we don't get this pumper replaced, okay? Because that's one of the big things for me is to not only gear up to answer the growth that this community is about to experience, but we want to make sure we're maintaining for the current population that we have and for the current housing that we have in this community. that's our biggest challenge right now. And honestly, we are down to one fire engine. Okay, so right now, we're relying on Rock Township Volunteer Fire Department. We have what's called an automatic aid agreement with them. Anytime we have a structure fire in our fire district, they automatically respond to us with a fire engine, support personnel, various vehicles, and that reciprocates back to their district as well. If they have a structure fire, we automatically respond with personnel, apparatus, equipment, tools. So in December 20th of 21, we met with Rock Township because we were in the midst of this ISO mitigation through the Insurance Service Office. I had Ken Stoops, he's the guy with the Insurance Service Office, contacted me that week of December, said we're preparing you for your next mitigation. The last one done, I believe, was 2017. That's where we went from a 5 to a 4, so we improved. Part of that ISO mitigation that we were required to do with Rock Township is to show that we could shuttle water. If we had a fire that was maybe outside of the distance of a fire hydrant, that we didn't have, a fire hydrant available, we have to set up this big portable tank. We have to dump 3,000 gallons of water into this tank, and then we draft from that. Instead of using a hydrant, we essentially draft from that pool and use that water to extinguish a fire, while the truck that dumped that water goes and finds a water source and fills their truck back up and drives back and dumps the water. So it's this continual just dumping water into this pool for whatever fire engine is being used for suppression, can draft water out of that pool if there's no fire hydrant available. So we had met for that training. Due to COVID, we weren't actually having the physical presence of our mitigation rep, and so they wanted us to perform this training and film it for them. So once we had completed that training, we had discussed, the fire chief from Rock Township and I had discussed, due to some unforeseen circumstances back in the spring, actually it was a low water level, we weren't able to go to Perry Lake, where the street department had dug an area for us, because we have to do these annual pumper tests. And essentially the fire engine pulls up next to the body of water, they lay the suction hoses with the strainer out into the body of water, and they draft the water from this pool, and they have to discharge this water, and there's various pressures for various time limits. I mean, each truck takes about 40 minutes. So we decided, let's go ahead, because we weren't able to do that in the spring, we don't want to lose points for our ISO mitigation, so let's go ahead and knock that out while we're out here at the Noble County Fairgrounds performing this video of this shuttling water. So we had pulled our first fire engine up, it passed. We pulled our tanker up from the Rural Fire Association. We pulled it up, it passed. I had to leave, so Rock Township, their engine was next. Anyhow, once we got to engine 7, this 1993 model that we're discussing here tonight, it began blowing huge amounts of smoke out from the pump. It began making really strange noises from the pump section. The crews that were out there actually thought this truck was on fire. And so they shut down the operation, so that pumper has essentially failed pump test, right? So that's our first hurdle, is that the pumper has not passed pump test. And so we were just hoping that after you guys had approved, 2020, there was about $9,000 spent on this truck to fix that pump. I mean, there was some pump issues back in, I believe, 20 or maybe it spanned actually a couple of years. There was a substantial amount of work that had to be done to that fire engine. So with both engines together, back in 2020, I believe this was about $18,000, right? So we spent a substantial amount of money on this truck trying to salvage it anyway. We went down this very road, not this dead-end road, but a pretty rocky road a couple of years ago of, do we fix this truck, do we replace it? Again, it's 29 years old. There's some other rules that we have to live by. The National Fire Protection Association says at 20 years old, that fire engine has to go to a second out truck. At 25, it has to be retired. We don't follow that because Oklahoma is not an NFPA state. We're not an NFPA state until something happens to one of our personnel, and then NFPA says, well, what were you using for a standard? That's when all of a sudden the question becomes, is Oklahoma an NFPA state? Do we have to meet those standards or don't we? I don't want to be the person that has to tell someone that I've lost a fellow member of my department because I had a truck that was 29 years old that wasn't fixed. That's where the point is that I'm at tonight. I want to emphasize the fact of not only are we trying to keep up with what we're anticipating growth-wise in the community, but we're trying to just maintain what we need to protect the citizens that we currently have right here in our fire district inside our corporate state limits right now. So,
Russell, when did you say that test was performed?
December 20th, on Monday the 20th of December. I do want to talk about some different options before I have Tyson put this thing on the screen here for you guys. There's really 3 different options that we have with Engine 7, right? We can repair that truck. We have no idea how much it's going to cost to repair it. I can't give you that information. I did have a service tech come up here. He looked at it and he said, I can tell you that the pump packing is gone. I think the pump shaft is scored. I think the chain drive is stretched. I think it could be cataclysmic when he takes this thing apart. No one knows. He may get it down there to his place in Chickasha, which it's going in the morning. A wrecker service will put him on a Landau trailer at 10 a.m. and it'll leave Perry for Chickasha. It's going to cost $1,200 just to trailer the thing down there and have this service tech look at it. Once he starts tearing into this thing, it could snowball into up to $60,000. I mean, but he doesn't know. It could be $5,000 or it could be $60,000. So that's the gamble with this truck. And so that's option number 1. The pros are definitely, I mean, I agree. I'm not wanting to spend a whole lot of money up there either on truck repairs, on replacing a truck. I mean, I'm not after, we're not after a brand new truck just to have something new. That's not what this is. Those vehicles up there, I mean, 29 years of firefighting with this truck, and it was running strong. It's just now we've got pump issues, right? So the question becomes, do you send it and maybe do $5,000 worth of repair work, maybe do $60,000? Then the issue is, when I talk to the service repairman, he's got one truck that's been sitting in his building down there for a year. He can't get parts. That may be where we're at with this truck. I don't know. He doesn't know, because he doesn't know, again, how in-depth this repair is going to be before he starts taking pieces apart and looking at different items inside of this pump mechanism on this truck. So that was one of the issues there. Again, we've made some pretty substantial repairs in the last couple of years. We don't know how substantial. Again, I want to emphasize that. It could be $5,000, it could be $60,000, and we could wait a year before we get the truck back. Okay, so that's kind of a worst case scenario on repair. That's a scenario on repair. We could replace that truck with a used truck. The problem is, we looked for used trucks. I actually sent 2 guys to, where was that at in Missouri, when UNC went when we had this.
This is right outside Springfield.
Okay, yeah, so when we had the same issue with this truck a couple of years ago, it was, hey, maybe this is an option. Maybe we go look for a used truck. The used truck, it fit our needs. It was about half the price of a brand new one. We started kicking this thing around and thinking, hey, maybe we can get it pretty cheap. Let's call back and kind of talk about, are there some things that we can maybe talk down on this thing? Let's start talking things, just to bring to you to make that decision. A week later, the truck was sold. That's exactly what we're running into now. There's trucks available. They range from 100,000 to 300,000. The mileage and the hours on those trucks are very comparable to Engine 7. And the availability is limited. So we may find that perfect truck that we feel like fits us today. We don't know what's wrong with that truck. I don't know mechanically or with the fire suppression system. I just don't know the problems with that truck. So my fear is, if we reach out there and say, hey, here's one for $200,000, is it $200,000 to buy someone else's headache when we could spend maybe $60,000 on that one, and we know what the headache is? That truck was purchased brand new by Perry Fire Department. It's 29 years old, but we know every issue with that truck from tailboard to front bumper. So that's one of the issues. Again, just not knowing, mechanically what condition the used truck will be in. Is it going to be available whenever we find one that we think fits our needs? And then the last option is replace with a brand new truck. A brand new fire engine right now is $550,000 to $600,000. two of the quotes we received a month ago. One quote from the company Banner Fire Equipment that sells E1. Their cost went up $30,000. February 1st, we received a quote from Conrad Fire Equipment for Pierce. Their prices are going up $40,000 February 1st. I mean, things are just spiraling out of control with the cost, I mean, just to make a purchase. And so that's where we're at on the only three options that I can think of. We fix it, we replace it with a used, or we replace it with new. And so, I mean, those are really the only three options that I could come up with. And if I could have Tyson go ahead and put this up on the screen here. So engine 7, again, it's a 1993 model. It's just completely out of service due to this catastrophic pump failure. What I wanted to do, and I was glad you brought that up, because there's engine 6. Engine 6, we got it in 2005. It was purchased on a grant. We actually, the city's portion that we paid for that, it was on the Assistance to Firefighters grant through FEMA. Shortly after 9/11, President Bush gave like $360 million, nationwide, and that was for being able to respond to these emergencies. So our grant totaled $190,000. Our purchase price that the city paid was a little over $32,000. Okay, and that was for engine 6. You can see the difference. I want to point that out because I thought it was kind of interesting. Engine 7 is a 93, engine 6 is a 2005. In 12 years difference, we have 33,000 miles on engine 6, and we only have 16,675 on engine 7. Why is that? Well, because engine 7 is it did not leave the corporate city limits of Perry, Oklahoma. It doesn't get on gravel roads. It doesn't leave. Engine 6, this 2005 model, it covers our entire fire district. So we've had this thing out in pastures for combine fires, tractor fires, structure protection on grass fires. It goes down county roads, muddy roads. It goes during torrential rain and thunderstorms to put out tank battery fires when lightning strikes a tank battery. So that truck gets used. We don't use our fire engines to chase ambulances whenever someone gets sick or gets hurt. Our fire engines don't do that. Those 33,000 miles just since 2005 are strictly responding to fire emergencies. There's multiple issues with that truck. The problem here with what is happening is prior to doing those pump tests on December 20th, we had already scheduled engine 6 to go to minor fire support because we have multiple electrical issues. You drive down the road and the lights and the sirens shut off, the radio keys up on its own, and the truck will just, like it's dying, and then the truck comes back on. So there's some sort of electrical issue that we don't know what it is, but it's something we definitely need to identify just for the safety of our crews and being able to respond and do the job that a fire truck should do. We've got multiple issues on the gauges. These gauges are hydraulic gauges. I don't know the cause for it. I just know that for the past 2 years, we've been noticing these gauges do strange things. That's extremely important. The PSI that's on one of those small gauges lets you know if you're about to sling a person that's inside a burning structure on the end of a nozzle, if you're about to push them through the roof or blow them out a window, or you are their lifeline standing at that truck. That communication is extremely important, and what you're about to give them water pressure wise in there at the end of that nozzle is extremely important. So just critical things that we need to address with engine 6. I put that on there because at 33,000 miles and the use for that truck, I'm going to say if we get 5 more years out of that truck, that's going to be a blessing. I don't know that we have 5 more years out of it, but I can tell you that is the primary fire engine that leaves for fire response for structures, vehicles.
In the county, right?
In the county, in our entire district.
Right, Russ?
Yes.
In our entire fire district, yes. Ambulance 10, purchase price was $113,000 in 2013. Right now it's got 80,000 miles, 81,000 miles. We've started to have some mechanical issues with that. We've replaced the turbo now twice. So we're starting to see it, spend a little more time in the shop. Rescue 12, Rescue 12 is it's a 1993 model, actually. So that truck was purchased back in 1999. There was a couple of options given to the council back then. They went for the $30,000 option. The only difference was the $35,000 option had what we call a skid unit in the back, which would have essentially made that a wet rescue truck. Right now, the vehicle's mechanically sound, operation, and we talked about this a couple of years ago, operationally. You know, we just had one last night. We have a head-on collision, someone's trapped, the car's on fire, we have multiple patients. We had 2 ambulances, a rescue truck, a fire engine, and a command vehicle trying to respond a mile outside of our district. That's 2 people in a fire engine, 2 people in a rescue truck, 2 people in each ambulance. So the resources are instantly depleted. And so the request for that wet rescue, our operations look a lot different today than they did in 1999. Okay, the fire chief in 1999 made the perfect decision for the way the fire department operated in 1999. We were required to live and be within 10 minutes of the fire station. That's just what you signed up for in 1999 when I started here. And so you were required to be on callback. And so anytime those on-duty personnel left, you were guaranteed to get people coming back to that fire station. We don't have that now. And so we may have 3, 4 fire suppression people on shift, and that's great as long as you have the knowledge of what's truly happening on scene. And typically people that call in a car wreck, they'll say the car's on fire and the person's trapped or the people are trapped and they're hurt really bad. Okay, well now there's a decision that has to be made in that fire station. Do we take a fire truck first and then get out there and just see that it's steam coming from the radiator because it got hit from the front end and now we don't have a way to cut them out of the vehicle and they're hurt really bad and now we can't provide treatment because we don't have an ambulance there yet because we're still waiting on someone else to get back to the fire station. And so with that wet rescue, it gives us the ability, we could respond with 1 person in that truck because they could respond with that. We've got 2 people in the ambulance, one's a suppression person, one's an EMS person. They show up on scene. This fire suppression person that's in the ambulance driving assists with the extinguishment and extrication of the vehicle and maybe the patient getting extracted from the vehicle. And now you have this 1 person that basically gets that unit back in service and leaves, and these 2 people transport the patient. That's really the most streamlined and most effective way today that we can determine a response. Very similar to last night's collision. So anyhow, that is it that I have really for those things, but I do think it was important to kind of talk about, you know, as we look into the future, a few years, because that's going to go really, really quickly.
How many ambulances do you have in the bays now? 3?
We have 2 ambulances, and then we have a what we call like a fast response vehicle or a squad.
Yeah. The suburban thing.
Correct. Yes, the expedition that was from the tribe.
So the 2 ambulances you have now are both those big red trucks.
That's correct. And then we have the Malzahn Family Affiliated Fund did purchase the Sprinter ambulance.
That's where I was headed.
Okay. The purpose for that ambulance is once we take what we do a scene call, we go in the ambulance, we pick a patient up from wherever that may be, and we take them to the hospital. Excuse me. If the patient's not stabilized and we take them to our local facility and they stabilize them, all they need is transported from a hospital where they're already in a stabilized environment. The hospital has done whatever interventions they need to keep the patient stable for us to go to this hospital and transport the patient to a higher level of care. We don't need the great big box for that. We don't, that gets 3 miles to the gallon. We need something that's effective for that type of transport that's going to get us hopefully 15, 16 mile per gallon. That's our hopes.
And your ambulance is put back in service.
And our ambulance remains here locally to respond to those scene calls. Yes, sir.
All right.
So, we've had lots of cooperation with the county over the years. We have our 911 center, we have our jail over here, we have the 522 ambulance tax, and the cooperation has been incredible. We do have that, what is the percent of the sales tax that goes to the fire department?
1/8 of a quarter cent.
Okay, now when that was voted, did that ballot actually provide that the dollars are divided among the 8
Equitably, yes, sir.
equitably? Russ pointed out the issue that if you were under $10 million of ARPA funds, you can spend those dollars for any reason. Of course, when we went to the county, we talked to them about the needs of the water project, which are real needs. But we talked about it for purposes of it being a water project. And of course, what the county does is they do roads, and what we really need is a road over the dam, as everyone knows. So it'd be great if in one of the roads of the county, they decided to, help us or do that road there. But today you mentioned, that this engine is the one that leaves the city limits, correct?
Correct.
And that, now everyone that lives here is a county resident. Sometimes we forget that you live in a city, you're not a county resident, but you are a county resident, And, it'd be nice if you'd actually, if you divided ARPA, which is based on population, if you divided on the basis of population, and you took that into, those county funds that were realizing you take the cap off, well, heck, there's enough money to buy that engine. I mean, and then a lot more to do county roads, out in the county. So I just point that out because, what we're talking about is money. It seems that the purpose of this engine is to deliver services within our fire district, which encompasses a large part outside of the corporate limits of the city, correct?
That would be
That's not
6.
engine 7,
Not
that's
7.
6.
6
Yeah.
is the one.
Excuse me?
That's
Oh,
It's
6,
six.
I'm
Six is
sorry.
a
Yeah,
problem.
6 is the
Yeah,
one I'm
it doesn't
talking about.
Which is
So
gonna
anyway,
be a problem.
It's gonna be a problem.
It's gonna be a problem, but I just throw that out, I wouldn't expect them necessarily on 7 if that's entirely used here, and yet, we're all county residents, so I just throw that out as possible dollars. Do you know what we have coming from that 1/8 of a cent fire? Do you know how much is there?
Around 1,600 to 1,800 a month, I believe, is what it's been averaging. With a quarter cent, I think it's 13,000, and then.
And does that get directly paid to us?
The 13, yes.
Yeah, it goes to the county, and then we have to encumber funds through the Perry Rural Fire Association for the quarter cent sales for the county fire tax.
Yeah, so where are those dollars? I mean, do we apply for?
Yeah, we make
project
a
or
request to
something?
the Perry Rural Fire Association. There's basically a capital outlay fund and then a maintenance and operations fund.
But do you know how much is in there that would be identified as our aid? I mean, have we spent any of that?
Dollar amount wise, yeah, we've spent. So the Perry Rural Fire Association also has the 2 small brush trucks that are in the fire station. And
Right.
so, that last truck that they just bought was, I mean, it's a 1-ton truck, and it was like $134,000. I mean,
And they bought that?
they did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Larry had sent an email earlier in the day, and he said tonight, his recommendation on this item would be to have Russell, to have engine 7 hauled to Chickasha for repair, which is already being done, figure out what that cost is. And then number 2, for the council to approve a new engine to replace 7. That way we would have a third out old unit for engine 6, that at some point we'd put engine 6 on a replacement also. So if engine 7 came back, okay, we could fix it for a reasonable amount. He's just saying we'd have a third engine.
We don't have room to house that though, do we?
Currently, no.
So
No,
we
don't.
can't, we can't buy a fire truck and set outside.
We actually talked about that today. That would become a wet rescue. if this is what develops, now we take the 1993 Chevrolet out. I mean, engine 7 has 13,000 miles, you know, the issue becomes then, I don't know, driving down a highway, I mean, I know that's better on them than what we use them for. It gets started, it gets checked, and then it may drive, excuse me, a half a mile, run at screaming RPMs, and then shut back down, go fill up with diesel and get parked. And that's what makes it so hard on fire engines, you know, I mean, it's a hard,
There's no warm-up time
Hard
on that
use
engine
on it,
before you
right.
push it to its limit.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Wait,
want,
we're saying engine 7 would become what? Is that?
I mean, that became the issue, you know, I guess with the make repairs and look toward the purchase of one. I do want to say one thing, and then I'm going to come back to that. These trucks that we're looking at, we call those stock trucks. These are not spec trucks. We're not sitting down and spelling out exactly what we're looking for. So we're going to just have to adapt. If that's the decision of the council, we're just trying to find a truck. Number one, that'll fit in the bay. And that's our biggest issue right now. I mean, we've got a fire station that was built initially in the 1800s. You know, I mean, it's been added on to over the decades. But we're limited in the depth of that fire station right now. So we're having to be pretty careful on what will even fit. You know, that's the last thing we want to do is find something that the door won't shut.
So I
well, I
appreciate
had a
it.
couple of fire departments that intentionally bought
Oh,
an oversized truck. I mean,
So this goes back to the rest conversation a while ago when we don't know things, okay? So we get advised to buy a fire truck and no one has told us, and I'm not faulting you for it, but no one has told us that we buy a fire truck, now we have nowhere to put it. So that's information we need to know before we go out and buy a fire truck, you know? And that's what aggravates me, that the whole picture is not on your part, okay? The whole picture is not being relayed to us. So. All right, finish your conversation, sir.
What about a grant for that ambulance? I mean, isn't it time, say May, isn't that when you file for those
correct, yeah,
tobacco
for the
grants?
URSRF. Mhm.
So, is there an opportunity there? Did we get one last year? No.
We did not. No, we did not.
So they do give you more points if you didn't get it last year, don't they?
We actually didn't apply last year. The window was extremely short. It was a very odd year. I mean, last year was the most limited time frame I'd ever seen for that grant. I don't know what caused that, you know, but the window opened and it was closed within like 20 days. I mean, you and I kind of had that conversation.
No, we talked about it, yeah. I mean, I wrote 3 of them for, 3 needs letters in about a 4-day period, because everybody just had to have them.
Well, can we do
know,
that this
for
year?
For
Call
an
Sean or
ambulance?
whatever?
We could?
Well, let's do that.
Okay.
I mean, let's do that. Let's get a hold of Sean, see when the period is, and, I mean, it's up to the council, of course, but, you know.
We'll have to
that-
cycle an ambulance out.
That's a
for
minor
housing
expense
purposes,
for
right?
a
Which again, that
grant.
ambulance 10, that's why I wanted to throw this out here, somewhat of a, I guess you could call it somewhat of a strategic plan here, but I want to make sure that you guys all know where we're at and what we're facing, because I do think in 5 years' time, that board is going to look a lot different with a rescue truck and ambulance.
Let's talk, because you and I talked about this part, and Russell and I have had this part. Get engine 7 replaced, get engine 6 replaced, get the wet rescue truck, and another ambulance. I mean, those are the 4 needs
Correct.
that really come in. And in that, just so you guys have a dollar amount, I mean, 600,000, 600,000, 265,000 for the wet rescue, and another $135,000 or $40,000 for the ambulance. That's what the last one was.
Yeah,
Is the new one now 165?
there was a
You're gonna
community
tell me
just
two.
north of us, about 35 miles, that spent 220,000 on this. It's just, the ambulances are getting,
Yeah, they're getting
So-
expensive.
I mean, we're well over, just what the fire needs in this 5-year period. Let's talk about it from that standpoint. But in this 5-year period, we're talking $1.5 million of equipment that we need to look at.
Yes.
And that equipment, the majority of it being 20 years on the engines. The wet rescue, what are we running timeline on it? Life.
It mechanically, I mean, right now it's sound.
Yeah.
You know,
Leaking antifreeze this morning, we can't find it.
except for it's leaking antifreeze, that's what this morning.
And then the ambulance is really on 5 years. You know, I mean, we're rotating those ambulances out on 5 years just because of the mileage that's.
Well, I'm not saying that some of the stuff the Malzahn Foundation has provided for us isn't a good thing, but I've been pushing for 3 years for that wet rescue truck, and Larry keeps pulling it off the wish list. So,
Yeah, it was on the wish list last year, but in budget time, you know, it got dropped to get effectively to get Woods Edition money in those pieces put into the budget. That was the.
And I do want to say too, I mean, during our CEP meeting, that engine wasn't a high priority
Yeah.
until that day. I mean, we thought we had these repairs done. We thought 2
I
years
remember a year or
ago.
so ago, we did those repairs.
Right, and we thought.
We actually
okay,
declared
got-
emergency on that.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was the
so-
packing, right? Or something? Was that what it was?
That's right, yeah.
Any more questions for Russell?
What are we here for today? What do you need, I mean, what,
I-
you went through a
I
lot
was-
there.
I was just coming tonight.
About $4 million.
Direction from the council on repairing, replacing. Again, I wanted to make sure everyone knew that on the repair side, I mean, it's not just the financial part of it, now it's,
How far out is a new truck? Did you say that?
well, with
on
the
there?
stock truck, yeah, thank you, I did not say that. I mean, there's stock trucks that are right now, there were trucks available a month ago, and all those trucks are gone, and they're saying there's some on the assembly line that, again, these stock trucks that are just built to their specs, March, April.
So in other words, the repair has to go through no matter, I mean, sending it down to get looked at that's done. I mean, we have to do that.
Just to make that informed decision on, and that was the issue, I couldn't get it down there before tomorrow morning. That was as soon as I could find a record that could get it down there was tomorrow.
How long before you assumed there would be an analysis done on that truck?
I actually spoke with the repair tech today, and he said, you can bring it down. He said, I've got a couple in the shop. He said, I'll get to it as soon as I can, but he couldn't give me a time frame, but.
Larry did go out and request quotes on a lease purchase on these and dollar amounts. If we do just the $600,000, on 7 years, it's $97,000 a year. On 10 years, it would be $72,000 a year. There is it's 3.25% interest, so, you know, we would be spending some extra interest over the time. He also did the $1.6 million for effectively doing all of those pieces. That's $260,000 a year on a 7-year payout and $193,000 on a 10-year payout.
I recently did a street sweeper. Those were the interest rates that were provided by the companies, but the banks were at 2.1%. That was about 2 weeks ago, so that would make some difference. I mean, the banks were fairly competitive.
So
The
just,
sweeper was
I just want to
250
make
or
sure you guys have.
225 or something.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russell.
So council, Chief Brand has brought this to us tonight and kind of let us know where we're standing up there at the fire station. I know with the budget we have, it's kind of depressing, you know. It's up to us to make that decision now, of which direction we go with this project. So, there has to be some level of discussion on how y'all feel. Or we could table the subject till 2 weeks to, well, actually, when is our next meeting? A week from now?
No, it's not till because the 31st is the next Monday.
So it'll be 2 weeks still.
Yeah.
We can wait till the 7th of February and have this discussion again.
So
It's a lot of money
as
to
they look
spend.
at that, are they supposed to get back like an estimate of what they're seeing
He will.
once they tear into it?
Right, yeah, so it'll, I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure it'll be a few days. I
Yeah.
mean, he said he had some things in his shop right now, so I'm assuming probably next week before he even starts taking.
So maybe by the 7th, we would have some kind of idea. I mean,
Right. And the issues you said about the truck and how old it is, I'm assuming this group is affiliated enough with it to be able to try to be able to tell us, are there even, I mean, because that's the second problem, right? Even if they can fix it and it's affordable, can we even get the parts?
Right, that was his primary concern down there, is he said,
Until you
I
can
may
see
get
it, you
to it,
can't.
and he said, I may identify the issue, but that was what he wanted to emphasize to me. He said, I have a truck sitting in my shop that's been here a year in February, waiting for parts. Now, he didn't tell me it was the same type of pump. and-
Please.
Yeah, sorry.
He's the least on the screen.
He didn't, he didn't indicate what the issue was with the truck that he had in his shop, so I don't want to make it sound like, yeah, it was the exact issue in the same pump manufacturer. I don't know what the issue was with that truck. He just said that he is having trouble getting parts. So he
do they
said-
sell new fire trucks?
What's that now?
I said, do they sell new fire trucks?
They sell new fire trucks.
Yes.
Yes. They sell one called a Toyne. We only had 3 quotes, one from a E1 manufacturer, one from a Pierce manufacturer, and one from this Toyne. We have no preference. Our preference is something that'll fit.
A fire truck.
I mean, literally, that's what we're at. So we've had this discussion that if it goes that way, I mean, we're gonna learn a new fire truck instead of speccing it out to this is.
So, let's just talk about though, if we were to spec one out,
Mhm.
is it adding 6 months to the
18.
production? 18 months to the
24.
production.
18 months.
So that's effectively off the table.
Well, it may be off the table for the first, but I mean, if we're looking at the second piece, I would rather get what Russell says, this will make the operations of the fire department the most efficient. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we need this on it, we don't need that, if we're going to, when we get to the point that we have to buy the second one, because let's be real, I mean, in talking, at some point, we're gonna get there, even if it's 18 months out now, I mean, I think we ought to really start looking, and maybe these are standard enough that there's not that big of a change.
Right.
But, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, at $600,000, I don't want to be sitting here in 10 years whenever Russell comes back and says, hey, we need to replace this one again because it didn't have this and this and this and this. You know what I'm saying? And now we're caught here, replacing the engine going, why didn't you ask for that the first time?
Yeah. Didn't have this one for 29 years because we didn't get.
And not, yeah, exactly.
And typically when I say a stock truck, it's usually it's a plumbing issue, like there may not be a bumper that has a fire hose in the front bumper and it doesn't have the outlet for that fire hose to attach, to be able to pull up and do like a quick attack where you just grab that hose. You have to actually go to the hose bed in the back, and so it's typically plumbing, it's typically, a specific type of siren. Cab space is gonna be the same, the number of fire personnel that it seats is gonna be the same. Paint schemes typically changes, the specifics that you get into, or what brand of light bar do you want, what brand of siren do you want?
Okay.
And those
So-
So
pumps-
they
we're not-
typically try to take like the 80% rule. This is what 80% of the people need, and that's why it's their stock vehicle.
But there is
Yeah.
some hose-sized things and whatnot, if
That's
I
right,
recall
that's right.
correctly,
That's right,
that may come into effect of
Right.
what you need versus,
right. And so Derek makes a good point. So what we call the intake, which is where when we hook up to the fire hydrant, the great big hose that plugs into the side of the truck, those vary in size in whatever community you're in. Some of those are 4-inch and some of them are 6-inch. And so those types of things are important, but I mean, that would have to be something that obviously we would have to know. So yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, you know.
well, is that, isn't 7 equipped with longer amount, I mean, not, I don't know if we can pull it off or whatever, but longer amount of hose than standard to hook up to hydrants because of our city?
Yeah, no, 1,000 foot.
Is it that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Seemed like there was, that
1,000 on each one.
was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good memory. But yeah, and like I said, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this ISO, because that was actually what started this mitigation that got us to where we're at today with this pump.
That was my next question. If you can you elaborate a little bit more on that and then the implications.
Yeah, so basically, when they come in and do this ISO mitigation, they look at our water supply, they look at our communications, they look at the number of personnel we have responding, they look at our water infrastructure, they look at how many fire hydrants we have and how many buildings we have in our community that are three stories or more. And from the
Whether we're doing code review.
whether we're doing code review, whether or not we're
Inspections
doing fire
correctly.
inspections, whether or not we're doing fire pre-plans, there's multiple components to this. You could call your insurance agent, we could all call our insurance agent, and we may all get a different answer. If you called and said, do you look at my ISO rating? They may say, no, we don't. They look at it, but what they look at is, what was your total dollar loss value for your community last year? And so they, I guess, by some sort of formula, they say, well, if you had this many dollars lost, it's probably because you responded adequately with personnel, adequately with apparatus, you could communicate on the fire ground, you had training for your fire personnel. They're looking at essentially the same components, but did you have all that you needed basically to extinguish a fire quickly before you caused a complete loss to a structure?
So with that pump truck failing, is there a window in order to be able to fix it? Do you have to call them back out? What's the procedure knowing that failed with them here?
So the request or the notification for our current mitigation was given to me the week before Christmas. Excuse me. And so I have not made contact back with him. There's a massive stack of paperwork that has to be done. Vernon and his group has to do some work. We've got a lot of paperwork up here that has to be done. The guys on the shifts have been getting all that done. So the reason we haven't made contact back with him is because we don't meet what is called a fire flow requirement. So we have to be able to respond on that initial call with certain gallons a minute, or excuse me, total gallons on the fire trucks. How many people are you responding with immediately? You know, and so essentially on that initial call, we're gonna respond with 1,200 gallons in the bed of that fire engine instead of 2,000 gallons. I mean, that's just where, and then we'll have, you know, this automatic
6
aid
versus
agreement.
7 is what you're talking about.
6 and 7, yes, correct. Yeah, so that's why we have this automatic aid agreement with Rock Township, because they show up with additional fire apparatus, additional personnel. We train together quarterly. I mean, they come to our fire station, we do quarterly training with them. So that benefits that ISO grade. That's why we have established that agreement with them.
So I don't know if that completely answered, is there a timeline?
Yeah,
before
no,
we-
I'm sorry. It's not like they give us a grace period. I'm not going to call back, and he's eventually going to call me and say, hey, why haven't I gotten that paperwork back? I mean, that's what will happen. So I'm going to have to send them paperwork that basically says we have one pumper that passed pump test and a tanker that passed pump test. We don't have another pumper that would pass. So
Is there a reason why it has to be towed? Didn't you say it has to be towed?
It does. So I visited with the service tech from MITRE. I asked him if we could drive it to Chickasha, and he did tell me of an incident that happened in a community south of us in a pretty large metropolitan area. They had some of the same issues, and apparently that pump, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend like I know the mechanical workings of how the
That's
pump and the drivetrain is tied in together, but he said it's about 90% pump gear and 10% road gear. This particular department had a similar issue. They were driving down the interstate, the pump exploded, took 3 cars out on each side, and anyway, he said
Yeah, let's not say $1,200.
$1,200.
And so we told that was,
Sounds cheap.
so, yeah.
When's that tow truck coming?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Thank you, Russell. Be back in a minute. Council?
I like the idea of shiny and new and exactly what he wants, but I think like most people here, I'm worried, what does this mean for next year when another big issue hits us? And we just then literally don't have any money.
I personally would like to wait till the next meeting to make this decision.
I do too.
We may have more information by then. And that doesn't put any, I mean, obviously, timelines are out there, right? I mean, we don't have any concern with that for you guys, right?
Yeah, let's get,
With the-
send it.
Not making any decisions tonight?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I mean, even if we made the decision, if you made the decision tonight to say, hey, go
Yeah.
buy a brand new one,
That's what I'm, so
It's-
it's still out.
it's gonna take as long to get the brand new truck as it is to
Right.
find out what's going on with that engine, so.
So I think the more information we can have, the better at this juncture.
I think we have to have
What is the,
facts.
what would be the resale value of that truck? I mean, if we got it fixed, I mean, is there a market for that old truck?
There is a market for it. I mean, typically, you know, there's gonna be some, like,
Rural?
interurban,
Well,
you know,
no, that truck's limited because it's not going rural at all.
right, right.
That's, what it's used for is what it's gonna sell as in town.
And I really hate to say, because
Well, I mean, I don't care, I just wanted to
Yeah,
throw
I
that
know,
out to
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
No, and I think that will have value. You know, I don't see it having the value of the $300,000 truck by any means. But
No, I didn't, but it'd be worth something. I mean,
it would be, I believe.
all I was getting at is your window is a little limited with that truck because it's gotta be used in the same.
So let's just wait till next, we'll get back on the
So
agenda.
there is a motion to tear it down, right? I mean, to tow it down there
Oh.
and to.
Oh, I don't know, do we have to, was that part of
That's
the,
happening anyway.
Well, talking about
Yes.
repair.
I thought that had to, I mean, that was happening and needed to happen, right?
Yeah,
Well,
so,
and getting it towed down
Well, it
doesn't
could be,
necessarily.
well, it could be
extend.
greater than the city manager's authorization.
okay,
Well,
Repairing it, I don't think we're making a decision
No.
on repairing it
Just
this
tear it
week.
down.
I think, yeah, to get it down there for $1,200 and get it
Yeah.
towed, and get it
tow
looked at,
and come back hopefully next meeting with some answers.
the idea of what.
Russell's gonna send it and ask for forgiveness.
yeah.
Get it scheduled.
All right, so I don't think, I mean, unless Bryce, unless you think different, I don't think we need to take action on
Yeah,
10.
that's fine.
All right, let's go to item 11. Items pertaining to the Perry Municipal Airport and improved airport drainage. Man, we've been working on that drainage a long
I was gonna
time.
say, how long before this is out?
Item A, approved FAA Delphi request to reimbursement in the amount of $120,552 for approved airport drainage project at the Perry Municipal Airport.
This is us getting money back, right?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes, we paid it.
Wines,
Yes. Please
White.
give us that.
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar,
Yes.
Streller.
Yes. Item B, approve application for payment number 2 in the amount of $102,082.16 with J&J Solutions LLC for improved airport drainage project at the Perry Municipal Airport.
Just like that. That's right.
And you spent it, I mean,
Well, I mean,
We'll still get that money.
we made $18,000 on the deal. I mean, come on.
That's somewhere else. Wait till next week gets.
Yeah, that'll be coming in the next report. It'll be 20,000.
Motion to approve payment number 2 in the amount of $102,082.16.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Wine,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck, yes.
Yes.
Vaughn, Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Item 12, any new business needs to come before the council tonight? All right, item 13, consider convening an executive session for one, to confer on a matter pertaining to economic development of the city of Perry, to discuss a proposal to entice the location of a residential developer to the community to build single-family dwellings, duplexes, and multifamily housing, and thereby approve the economic development of the city of Perry. As public disclosure, the proposal will interfere with the development and implementation of the proposal. There was addition pursuant to 25 OS 307 C11 of the Oklahoma statutes as amended. And number 2, to discuss the appraisal and purchase of certain real property pertaining to the Upper Black Bear Watershed Project pursuant to Title 25, Section 307B3 of the Oklahoma statutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Got a horse to that? Roll call, please.
Wine,
I heard you
Yes.
talking already.
White,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dilbeck,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Calderon,
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. All right, item 14, motion to reconvene, please.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Hines,
yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar.
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes, thank you. Item 15, number A, letter A, take any action deemed necessary pursuant to such executive session, including but not limited to the approval of the development agreement with KMR Development LLC of Oklahoma Limited Liability Company, Freedom Homes Company LLC, and Oklahoma Limited Liability Company, Perry Municipal Authority. Hearing none, we go to item B. Take any action deemed necessary with respect to appraisal and purchase of certain real property related to the Upper Black Bear Watershed Project, or if negotiations are not successful in the next 7 days. Item number 1, approve resolution number 2022 Intimate Domain 01 of the City Council of the City of Perry, Oklahoma, declaring the necessity for acquiring interest in real property as described and attached as addendum number 1 from Maurice E. Bales and Ramona G. Bales. Husband and wife and others are required, setting out the reason for the exercise of the intimate domain.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Hines,
yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar.
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Number 2, consider approval of the resolution number 2022 Intimate Domain 02 of the City Council of the City of Perry, Oklahoma, declaring the necessity for acquiring interest in the real property as described and attached as addendum number 1 from the Van Meadowlands LLC as domestic liability, limited liability company and other as required, setting out the reason for the exercise of intimate domain.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Hines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar.
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Number 3, consider approval of resolution number 2022 Intimate Domain 03 of the City Council of the City of Perry, Oklahoma, declaring the necessity for acquiring interest in real property as described and attached as addendum number 1 from the Lake Farms LLC and Oklahoma Limited Liability Company and others as required, setting out for the reason for the exercise of the intimate domain.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Hines,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar.
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes. Thank you. Item 16, motion on adjournment, please.
So moved.
Roll call, please. Who said what? We're going.
Second, somebody seconded.
Hines,
We all said it. Yes.
White,
Yes.
Brown. Yes. Dilbeck.
Yes.
Bond,
Yes.
Goldar.
Yes.
Stroller.
Yes.